people will say, where did you get your sound? Or how did you develop your style? And we've never made any attempt to acquire a sound or any attempt to develop a style.
No, it's just your voice.
It just, came, I think working with orchestras in our young years had a great deal to do with much of our attitude towards music.
The Andrews Sisters, whose voices combined with perfect synergy. Laverne had a very low voice, Maxine's was kind of high, and Patty was sort of, well, in between. It was like God had given them voices to fit their parts. Their rise in popularity coincided with the advent of swing, and their style fit perfectly into the new dance craze. Their aim was to reproduce the sound of 3 harmonizing trumpets, and by golly, they were successful at it.
The Andrews Sisters were born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, but actually your heritage goes back further than that, doesn't it?
Our parents were born in Europe. Our father was born in Argos, Greece, and our mother was born in Trondheim, Norway. So that makes us Norwegian, Greek, Americans.
You name it, you're in
That's
it. You've been in the business since 1933. That's a long time. How did it first happen for you?
It was at the Orpheum Theater in Minneapolis. His name was Larry Rich. And he was doing a new show the following year. And he picked 9 youngsters out of Minneapolis, and we were 3 of the 9. And I don't know whatever happened to the other 6. But we decided then, when he broke up the show after that year, we traveled all over the United States doing which was great for us because we worked the last of the RKO theaters, and it was a marvelous experience. It taught us theater discipline, many things that came in, as when success finally did happen to us, we were prepared.
You girls traveled all over the world as a threesome. Are there advantages and or disadvantages to traveling as a trio if you're female?
There are disadvantages depending on what your drive is, what you want out of it. In other words, we enjoyed our work so much that we didn't think of the disadvantages, such as there wasn't time for dates. When you got to be around 15, 16, 17 years old, you didn't think of that. We didn't have that marvelous thing, such as, say, my children have gone through going to high school and college. By that time, we were doing 6 and 7 shows a day. But again, it just depends on if one is, really willing to sacrifice for a career. We rehearsed every single day, sometimes 6, 7, 8 hours a day.
Yeah,
that's how we learned. Because see, we didn't read music. We never learned to read music, and we just happened to have the talent to be able to hear the harmonies, and then we enjoyed making up our own vocal arrangements.
We never changed our parts. I always sang the melody. Maxene always sang the second part. And Laverne always sang the third part.
Well, it was like our voices were geared for that.
Yeah, it was
Laverne had a beautiful low, round,
rich quality,
rich tone that we always felt was really the base, the foundation of the sound of the trio. We do our homework at home. We could go in 3 hours and knock off 4 sides. Mm-hmm. And I found out the other night that it takes sometimes 6 months to a year to make one album. They go into the studio. Everything is mechanical now. They go into the studio or electronically done. And it was really quite an eye-opener to me.
You girls did a lot of recording sessions with another luminary in the world of music, Mr. Bing Crosby. What were your methods of working together?
Bing always loved to record the first thing in the morning, like 8:30, be there ready to go. And most of the time it would be the first take, because he always felt that you'd become a little staler as you go along, doing a second and a third and a fourth, and then something would go out of that take.
Well, it's the feel.
Yeah.
I believe this. Somebody said to me yesterday that they did on Rosemary's Baby, they did one scene 37 times. And I said, how in the world could you have done that scene?
Hard labor.
That's right.
You ladies started by singing with big bands, and I was surprised at the name of the gentleman who led the band with whom you first sang.
Ted Mack. He played clarinet. No Artie Shaw, but he had a very, very good and entertaining orchestra.
Then from there, we got the opportunity to starve to death in New York, and we picked up a job at the Edison Hotel just to do the radio broadcasts because he could only pay us for the radio broadcast, which was what, $30,
Oh, no,
$15 a
$15.
broadcast. So we took that, and on one of the broadcasts, the vice president of Decca Records was in a taxi cab, and the cab driver had that station on, and he heard us sing, and he said, "Take me to the Edison Hotel," and he had him drop off there to get in touch with us, and that's how we got the chance to sing for Decca.
The second session we did was by Mr. Duchesne and Nice Work If You Can Get It.
That was
supposed to be the A side. In those days they had the A and B side. And so a young man who later on became our manager, they couldn't find a B side. So he had an idea. He said, as long as we were going to be around New York and work with the great Jewish population in New York, he remembered a song that his mother used to sing to him, called by Mir bis Duchesne. But there weren't any English lyrics. So he taught it to us phonetically in Yiddish. And we went in and recorded it in Yiddish. And when Jack Kapp heard it, he again got a hold of Sammy Kahn and Saul Chaplin and had them write an English lyric to it. And we came back and re-recorded it. And that was by Mir bis Duchesne.
We lived in an apartment on 45th Street. And our dad and mother were with us then. And finally our father came and woke us up about 8 o'clock in the morning and said, "You've got to come, get up, get dressed, and come down to Broadway. Because there's a record shop that is playing your record of By Mir bis Duchesne out into the street, and it's stopping traffic." And we didn't believe it, so we went down there and stood around with everybody else listening to the record.
And it's literally the truth. They were across Broadway and across 7th Avenue.
But that hit record didn't necessarily ensure success, did it?
See, it wasn't like today, when they have a hit record, then all of a sudden they go out and they make themselves $20,000 a night, Like Maxene said, we still couldn't get a job. We finally got a job at the Metropolitan Theater in Boston, and our act consisted of a fast opener and a second song that was a ballad, and then the third number was By Mir bis Duchesne, but we'd have to do that number on stage at least 6 or 7 times.
And it was so marvelous because the people would sing it with us. We had like 7 smash hit records in a row after that. And we were still making them for $50 a record, $50 a session. And then July, that summer, we were going into the New York Paramount Theater, getting the huge sum of $1,000 a week. And Jack Kapp called us into his office and tore up our contract, made it retroactive, and gave us the same deal that Crosby had, which was marvelous of him. And we were with him for 17 years.
One of your most successful records, and yet a record that was most controversial because of its lyric content, is a thing called Rum and Coca-Cola.
Well, you couldn't do it on the air because of the word rum. They couldn't advertise liquor. There's a story to that, too. We did Rum and Coca-Cola. We did 4 sides. And we had
20 minutes left on the
20
date.
minutes left on the date, so we thought we'd take advantage of it. And we just heard this song the night before. We didn't have an arrangement on it or anything. So everybody who was sitting in the aisle, they were in the studio, they were all faking it, like the trumpet player faked it, and the
we had the clavis and the maracas, and we had everybody doing everything.
And we just did a take on it, just
That
one
was it.
take, just to have it there in case we felt that it might be something that we'd want to come back later on to record. And the minute that happened, and Jack Kapp and David Kapp, heard it, they just said, "That's it."
Sold
And
7 million records.
that's gonna in 6 weeks.
And yet many stations banned it. They wouldn't play Rum and Coca-Cola because you sang these words: "Drinking rum and Coca-Cola, working for my Yankee dollar."
Now, years before, I must admit we were really pretty naive about a lot of things. Because we'd hear a song and, if we liked it, because in the early years of our successful career, those were the years of what we used to call novelty songs. Remember, you don't remember, but they came out with things like Hot Set, Three Little Fishies, cement mixer, putty, putt, putt, and things like that. And they were all novelty songs. So we did we heard a song called Hold Tight. Now, older was to the song, it went, hold tight, hold tight, hold tight, for the yakasaki, want some seafood, mama, period. Well, we heard this black boy do this thing in Philadelphia. And we said to our manager, we want a song written about that, because everybody in the audience would sing it with this entertainer. And so we came up with a thing called Hold Tight. Well, we didn't know the connotation of that either. And that was banned on the air. So when Rum and Coke came along, the thing that really intrigued us was the calypso.
Rhythm. The calypso
We'd
type
never
of rhythm.
heard, at least we had never heard or done anything in the calypso vein. So we weren't really concerned about the lyric.
At the height of your career, you were very much in demand in motion pictures here in Hollywood.
We always used to make sport about working in pictures because we were never, we worked at a studio that they had one star, Deanna Durbin, big star. So everybody came out with this Deanna Durbin hairdo and Deanna Durbin dresses, and you were never yourselves, and they'd always try to see. It's so different today. Today they just let you be your, what you are. And the makeup man, he'd always put on this real heavy grease paint. And we'd say, no, we've got to wear much lighter makeup. Well, he would insist upon it, and we'd get so furious because he was famous for doing the Frankenstein pictures.
And the Wolfman, and that's what
And
we look like.
we always felt that that's what we looked like, And at one time, we wanted to have a special piece of material written and do it on the floor, and say why you don't see us in pictures anymore, because of this routine.
One of your biggest hit records came from one of those motion pictures, Don't Sit Under the Apple Tree with Anyone Else But Me. And of course, when this was a hit, it was during wartime, and the lyric of the song meant so much to the wives at home and to the guys overseas. Didn't this account for the record's tremendous popularity?
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
In fact, a lot of those things.
I speak to a lot of the young people today, and they talk about messages in their songs. And, one night I said, look, in our time, we had messages too. Ours were more romantic because the boys were going away to war. So we were singing the love messages, or we were singing the real happy tunes so that it would give them kind of a, they wouldn't have to think of the seriousness of, what was going on and where they were going. And something that Patty and I have always remarked about is that how interesting during those years that really were tragic, because it was the big war, that we represented so much happiness to people.
Well, Apple Blossom Time was pretty much like Don't Sit Under the Apple Tree. That was during the war years, wasn't it?
Yes, well, we did, we did Buck Privates with Abbott and Costello. And Apple Blossom Time was in that picture. And that became a big smash. And then Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy came out of that picture.
Well, I'll tell you a story about Apple Blossom Time. They didn't want it in the picture because it was an all-comedy picture, and they said it'll slow the picture down.
They didn't want us to do a ballad.
And so we fought them on it. And so they said, well, we're not going to pay for it. So we went to the publisher, and we paid $200 for the rights to do Apple Blossom Time in Buck Privates, because we felt in our hearts that Apple Blossom Time was going to be a big hit. See, it had been a big hit 35 years before we'd ever done it as a waltz.
Yeah.
And so when we heard it, we just picked it up and put it in our temple, like the kids today do. And, we really just felt real secure about this thing.
Now, in an Abbott and Costello comedy, what was the situation where you would sing a beautiful song like that?
All right, I'll tell you. Every picture opened the same way. It opened at a canteen with the Andrews sisters singing a real jump thing, Then it would pan away to the story of the boy and the girl, and the boy was going to go to war, you see. And then maybe Apple Blossom Time would get in there, was when he would come back from the war. And we'd have the dance, and the two of them are embracing, and then it would pan away to the three of us sitting under a tree or something, and we'd be singing Apple Blossom Time. But every picture was the very same thing. They only had different titles, but they used us the same.
And they lived happily ever after.
Absolutely.
That was
With
it.
us doing a boogie woogie as the train went out into the sunset. You know, the same thing.
It was a stroke of genius to pair you on records with the all-time crooner Bing Crosby.
Jack Cap was the one who got the idea of coupling us together. In fact, they didn't couple artists together. This, I think, we were like the first ones where you took two names and big names and put them together on a record.
Yodel and Jive and Chirr Bear Beat. And that was our first gold record.
It had to be quite a thrill to record with Bing Crosby.
We always laid out all the vocal stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And then Bing would come in, and he doesn't read music either. So this is the blind leading the blind, you know. And then we'd lay it out, you know, that Bing would sing this part and we'd do this, and then Bing and I would do a part together. And then I would just teach Bing, you know, the part that he was going to do. And we hit it off real great together.
Weren't you a little nervous working with Bing Crosby?
Well, we worked across the mic from him. And I didn't dare look at him. Because I knew if he looked at me, I was going to faint dead away.
You know, like even on Pistol Packin' Mama, that one part where he says, lay that thing down before it goes off and hurts somebody, he just threw that in, you know. I mean, he'd do things like that, just throw them in.
But what we used to do, because we didn't read music, we'd take a sheet of paper and we'd have the lyrics typewritten. And it would say, if Bing was to start, it would say Bing, and then it would be the lyrics. And Bing and Patty, then it would be the lyrics, or the trio, or Bing and the trio. And that's all we worked from, was just the lyric sheet.
The second biggest hit for the Andrews Sisters was a pre-war veteran titled I Can Dream, Can't I?, which spotlighted you, Patty, on lead vocal. Academy Award winner Sammy Fain had written this song for a 1937 Broadway show titled Right This Way, and he watched the song grow in popularity during World War II. In the 70s, even Karen Carpenter recorded this song.
Dave Kapp, this was one of his favorite songs, and he was the A&R man at Decca. And he just felt that he wanted to do a record with Patty doing most of the solo on it. So he more or less like laid it out. You know, start with a little bit of trio, and then Patty takes the whole first chorus, and then the trio will come in on the bridge, you know, and then Patty will finish it out, and the trio, and it worked.
But Dave had remembered the song. It had been in a show. The show had been successful. The particular song had never. But David always loved the song and said someday he was going to get it recorded by what he felt was the right artist, and he felt that it should be a girl. And he just loved the way Patty sang, and he said that this was a song just written for her.
Do you ever see any of your movies on the late shows?
Sure.
How do you feel?
I said, God, those girls sing great.
I feel like Betty Davis. When she first went to work at Warner Brothers, she always felt so insecure because she felt she was so unattractive. And she says now when she sees her old pictures, she says, my, wasn't that woman beautiful? And it's only been, I would say, in the last few years that I've had the nerve to watch them, because I hated pictures. I just thought that was the dullest form of entertainment for me. You know, we were so used to getting out on the stage and being prepared and going through your routine and with all that excitement. And then you get in the studio and they probably 8 o'clock in the morning, and you know, you're still a little groggy because you've been in makeup at 5.
Yeah.
And then the director says, okay, girls, animate.
The funny part would be, the first minute on the set would be all long shots. So you'd be all day with long shots. And then by the time 9 o'clock at night came, that's when they did the close-ups, and your makeup was like that thick on your face, you know, when you smiled.
Yeah.
You know what they used to do to us? They'd send us up to the extras department, because there was no budget on our pictures. And they'd pick out something that was 3 alike.
You know, these pictures made an awful lot of money. You know, they turned those pictures out for as little as $80,000.
I don't think there was a picture outside of the Abbott and Costello picture that we made that made less than $1.5 million in the studio.
Bing Crosby, how did that all start?
Oh, that was our biggest thrill, you know, to make a record with Bing. And Jack Cap was the one who got the idea of coupling us together. In fact, they didn't couple artists together. This, I think, we were like the first ones where you took two names and big names and put them together on a record. Yeah. You know, and
first record we sold with Bing had Joe Venuti on it. It sold 1 million records.
Which one?
That was Yodel and Jive and Chirabirra Bee. And that was our first gold record. And that's an interesting thing, too, Wink. Decca started the Gold Record Club. But at that time, you had to sell 1 million records in a 1-year period. It couldn't hang over. And if you missed by one, you didn't get it.
Two of your biggest duets with Bing were Don't Fence Me In and Pistol Packin' Mama. Were they your biggest duets with him?
No, Jingle
No.
Bells. I think Jingle Bells, really
yeah.
sold the...
And then we did South America Take It Away with Bing.
That was another million.
And we did an awful lot of things with them.
And then we also made records with Guy Lombardo and with Carmen Miranda and with Dick Ames.
And Danny Kaye's only gold record was with the Andrews Sisters, a thing called Civilization.
What did you record with Dick Ames?
We did There's No Business Like Show Business.
As a matter of fact,
we did a radio show with
we
him,
did a
too.
radio show, Campbell Soup,
For
one
Club
season
15,
with Dick Ames.
Yeah.
No, he was great. Remember one time Patty brought in, he had a recording date with Gordy Jenkins, and he obviously was so pleased with them. We were at rehearsal over at CBS with Club 15, and so he brought in the playback, and we sat in the control room and listened to it, and it was possibly one of the most thrilling things I've ever heard. Vocally, it was great. With he got the same sort of relationship with Gordy that we had with Bing.
You enjoyed two big hits with Gordon Jenkins, There'll Never Be Another You and I Can Dream, Can't I? But you didn't always agree.
I became rather sensitive about the fact that I didn't feel that he enjoyed our kind of harmony, because when he came into rehearsal, he wanted to write our harmony, and so we didn't buck him, and we didn't want to say to him, look, we can't read music.
But we tried it, but it didn't work out.
Well, we tried it, and of course, Dave Kapp almost blew his top because we sounded like just any other trio.
Well, our
the whole
own
style was gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Andrews Sisters sound is our own sound, our own type of, but whether you want to call it barbershop harmony or what.
No, it's called, I learned when I was at the college, Patty, it's called triads.
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 There you
Isn't
go.
that-
You're
that's
never
what
too
they-
old to learn anything, are you?
The Andrews Sisters, like Bing Crosby, were on Decca Records from the very beginning of that label.
They were the sort of, let's say the rebels when they got into the business. It was the Columbia and their subsidiaries, Brunswick, and then there was RCA and Bluebird. And of course then Decca kind of snuck in at the 35-cent label, and they only wanted a small stable. They wouldn't sign everybody. And they didn't get anyone that would really, like when they had the Andrews Sisters, they would never sign another girls' trio, no matter how good they were. Or Crosby, if they had Dick Ames, who sang an entirely different style than Bing. Or the Ink Spots, they never signed anyone that would conflict with the Ink Spots or with Guy Lombardo, but Jack always wanted just a small stable of stars. That way we all got individual attention. And even as the president of the company, many times Jack Kapp came in and sat down while we were making the record. But they always thought of ways. See, they would have time then to think of ways to expand.
They did that for Bing. When Bing all of a sudden, instead of recording with a band, they had him do a couple sides just with an organ. Or maybe just with Perry Botkin on banjo.
Mm-hmm.
Or even remember when Bing did the first record with, I think, Louis Jordan. Not Louis Jordan, but
Louis
Armstrong. Those were, but they tried to think of ways to, not only to hypo the sales of the records, but to keep the artist alive.
Yeah.
Because their artists were like their family.
Out of all of the records that you made, do you count any one as your favorite?
The fact that we used Apple Blossom Time as a theme song, and I think that we all felt that way. I never ever felt that all the years that we did these songs that I got tired of singing them.
I did.
Well, Maxene, let's admit it, Maxene she loved all the money, but she hated working.
No, that isn't true. There are, Wink, there are songs that wear well. Yeah. Apple Blossom Time, to me, wore well. By mere Shane, but Rum and Coca-Cola, forget it. And when we used to work in clubs, I would think of 1,000 excuses. But Patty was wise to every one of them as to why we shouldn't do it on the floor. And of course, we never could get away with not doing it. But, it got so monotonous. You could change other songs. And the way we used to work vocally, we would take the liberty. I mean, the arrangement would basically be the same because you can't, but we would fool around with them and have fun with the songs. But with Rum and Coke, you couldn't do that because it was just that same da-dum, dum, 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 dum. And I used to walk off of the stage with my head going that way saying, I hope I never do it again. I hope I never do it again.
People love to remember the good times. And it must give you a tremendous feeling of accomplishment, a good feeling inside, to know that looking at those faces, you make those people, countless, millions, happy.
Yes, it is a tremendous feeling, and you do feel that way. You go out there and you know that, gee, they really like us.
Yeah.
Well, I think I said this to someone one time that some elderly gentleman was paying me a compliment for my sisters when I was in Florida, and he said, no matter what the Andrews sisters have done or what they will do, and he was speaking of our personal lives. He said, I've never heard of anything, but nothing could ever destroy our love for the Andrews sisters. And I looked at him, I said, well, that's very kind. And I said, it's very touching. I'm glad I know it now, and I didn't know it then, because I don't think anyone wants that onus put on them, that kind of responsibility that, we're human beings and we do make mistakes, and I'd hate to get out on the stage and say, oh my, gee, they expect me to be so perfect tonight, I can't make a mistake. Or I couldn't goof off, which I used to do quite often.
Which was the biggest goof off of the bunch, Patty?
Maxene. You didn't have to ask me that, did you?
It's interesting how you'd meet someone and they'd be part of your audience, let's say, and so they're sitting out there and they're now in their mind, they're saying now, oh boy, this girl is like this, and this girl is this, and this girl is like that. And so when they'd say to me, yeah, boy, I'll bet your sister Patty, she's a real heller, isn't she? And I'd say, nope. Oh, well, she's on the stage. And I said, yep, on the stage. She lives very quietly off the stage. Oh, well, Laverne was so shy, and I said, now there's where you're... Laverne was the heller of the family. She was the goer and the doer. Very quiet on the stage. Everybody said, oh, poor Laverne. Oh, isn't she shy? And I just stood there and smiled a lot. That's all.
And vomit before the first show.
I don't know what
You want to hear something funny? You have to know now how Maxene felt about performing. I think that's the thing, that she loved to sing, but she hated performing. Before every opening show, she'd much rather be any place else but there.
Well, the first year we were in show business, even as children, entertaining around Minneapolis, we'd entertain for the DARs and the Veterans Hospital, and I never thought of performing. It was so natural. And one day we were on the stage, our first year in show business, and for some reason, I saw the audience for the first time. And I developed my first case of stage fright and never got over it. It was just the most... it's a terrible thing because when you're out there with three other girls and you think they're just looking at you, that's a terrible thing to say, but I was sure.
Self-centered person.
Right, see? There it all comes
My mother
out.
told me never to be that way.
There was a time when you girls went your separate ways. What was the cause of that?
Just working too hard and not thinking about each one of us being individuals and thinking that the Andrews sisters were the most important thing in this whole wide world, and never having a chance of having your own identity, and just circumstances of things like that just got to the point where you just couldn't work together anymore.
And when did this happen? What year
In
was it?
1954.
Have you ever had any reservations about this? Have you
No, I
been
think it
sorry?
I think it was the best thing that ever
Greatest thing
happened.
that ever happened to us, because after we got back together again, we really enjoyed working together.
After that 2-year breakup, what brought you three back together?
I'll tell you what happened, really. They had a big gold record TV show called The Golden Circle. And at that time, there weren't that many people that had gold records. So they made this big TV special, and they asked us, the three of us, individually, if we'd be
Not
willing
collectively.
to...
We weren't talking yet to each other.
if we'd get together and just do this one show. So I guess we all figured, well, just to do one show won't hurt, But the reaction from the show for the Andrews Sisters was staggering. And then we finally sat down and talked and said, this is ridiculous,
And we laughed about all the things.
So
But
that we
see,
thought
we
was
had-
so serious, now we could laugh at them,
Also, we did. We worked 50 weeks a year. And the only 2 weeks we ever took off was the Christmas holidays, to be with our mother and father when they weren't traveling with us. And then our mother died suddenly, and a year later our father died. And just, everything sort of
like fell apart as far as
we were concerned. And so I guess it was one of those things where I can't even tell you really what created the blow up.
Yeah.
It was just one of those emotional things where I guess we were just all darn tired. We had our differences because we're certainly individually we're entirely different. We've never had the same friends. We've never dressed in the same style. Our taste in homes are different. Our other enjoyments, our pleasures, our hobbies are entirely different. The only thing that really we were like one was in our work.
What is the most outstanding performance, or is there one memory in
I think there are a few of them.
Yeah. One of them that stands out in my mind is the Palladium in London. That was because when the curtain opened and the band played the introduction and you went to sing, the people stood up on one body and just applauded for like 5-10 minutes.
Oh, but we've had some marvelous, I think one of the great thrills, we entertained for the King and Queen of Greece when they were here. And when we were overseas for the USO, Patty announced to 5,000 boys in Naples, Italy. They were getting ready to be shipped to the South Pacific, and she announced the end of the war
with Japan.
To them, and telling the marvelous story about the young man.
Well, when the general had come to me and said, Patty, I think I've got an announcement that you could make to these boys, because these boys were very unhappy. They thought that they were on the what they called the green ticket or something, that they were going to be shipped home. Then at the last minute they were told that they were going to be shipped straight to the South Pacific. So this was like an angry 5,000 soldiers. So when he came to me and told me this and then handed me the piece of paper, and I used to MC the show, we had like a regular package that went along with us. And when I announced it to them, they thought there was no reaction. They thought that it was part of a skit that we were going to do or something. Mm-hmm. And so I said, don't you understand what I'm telling you? You don't have to go. The war with Japan, it's all over. Still no reaction. Now my two sisters came out on the stage. Now we began to cry. And finally somebody was sitting up on top of the rafters, and he let out a scream, and he fell back, but the crowd below broke his fall, the fellas. So I told him, I said, look, if you want to stay and see the rest of the show, or do you all want to go out and just get stinko, So some of them left, but most of them stayed. But anyway, my husband and I were in Cleveland. We were checking into the hotel, and when we got in the elevator with the bellboy looked at me and he said, Miss Andrews, you don't remember me, do you? And I said, gee, I'm sorry, I don't, but where did we meet? He says, when you announced the thing, the war with Japan was over with, he says, I was the little guy that fell off of the rafter. We meet many, many fellas that were there at that time. Yeah. Because when it finally, sunk in, they all ran up on the stage and hugged us and kissed us like we had stopped the war,
We had some embarrassing incidents, too. Every time I see or hear Bob Hope or think of Bing Crosby, we were doing a command performance show over at NBC. And they used to, they'd make these big records and they would just send them out to the, the hinterlands they were just for the people in service. And so we had done a song with Bing, and it was just at that time that the skirts for the girls came out that had the elastic on top, and I remember I had a suit on with that skirt and a blouse and a jacket, and Meredith Wilson was conducting the orchestra.
We did Don't Fence Me In.
We did
wasn't
Don't
it?
Fence Me In with Bing. Now, again, we're working across the mic, but when Bing wouldn't remember a lyric, he'd keep shifting around so his back was to, then he'd keep looking at Patty because he was getting the lyric cue from her. So we were always very good with our bows, and we always worked more or less like one. So as we were going to go off the way we should go off, Bing got in our way. So we're kind of scrambling around, and we were taught you never turn your back on the audience. So as we're going off in a hurry and bowing, my left heel caught the end of the podium, and I went down, like on one foot. And as I went down, the left foot went up, and I grabbed a hold of Patty, who happened to have the same kind of skirt on. And by the time in slow motion I got to the floor, her skirt was down to her knees.
Now you know why we made a record called Strip Polka.
So, I was so... And when I would get this embarrassed, the first thing I wanted to do was cry. And so finally, Patty was so mad at me because she was embarrassed, and she got me up off of the floor. We ran at the wings. Bob Hope came out, and he wouldn't just let it go. Not him. No, he had to call us back out on the stage, and he kept saying, "I want a repeat performance."
How about the time you got locked in the ladies' room, Maxine, on the introduction of the song in the theater? And here they are, the Andrews sisters. And Laverne and I run out, and there's no Maxine. And all of a sudden we think, where is she? Play the introduction again. And all of a sudden we can hear her pounding on a door. She was locked in the...
I didn't know the audience could hear. I kept saying, "I'm locked in the toilet. I'm locked in the house." And they had one of the stagehands came down with a screwdriver and had to take the door off.
Yeah.
And how embarrassing.
So
when
she
I got
walked
to
out on
see
the
Lady
stage
Di.
with the door under her arm.
What was the audience doing all this time?
They were laughing.
Laughing.
What else? One time we were playing the, I forget the name of the theater in Baltimore. And, between you'd get bored sitting around. Besides, most of those dressing rooms, were so crummy. They'd spend $1 million fixing up the front of the theater, and you'd go back to these crummy, nothing dressing rooms, no chairs, cement floors, and a little metal top table. So we'd go out between shows, and whether it was popular in those days or not, we always wore slacks between shows. I used to roam around the stores, and I'd just look at, go through the antique shops, and all of a sudden I saw the clock, and I said, "My God, I'm going to be late for my show." So I flew back to the theater. By this time, they're already playing the introduction music. The girls are standing there saying, "Where's Maxine?" Our secretary gets me into my dress, and I go out on the stage. Now, as I go to make my entrance, I have loafers on. I'd forgotten to change my shoes. So Patty is standing in the middle, and she's saying, "All right, come on out." And I'm coming out with the music, and as I came, we were wearing long dresses. And my foot got caught in my skirt. So as I went out, I kept getting lower and lower, until when I got in front of the mic, I was flat on my stomach. And Patty said to the stagehand, "Lower the mic, we'll sing from down there."
From what you've told me, it seems to me the only changes you might make if you had your life to live over would be your time doing motion pictures.
We were always so tired when we came in because, let's say that we did 6 musical songs in a picture. Well, we'd just come off of the road, and we'd have to work like every day and practically all night long just to learn the songs. And on a Friday, we'd record them. The following Monday morning, we're on the sound stage ready to do them. So we never had a chance for any thought. Consequently, we made no demands.
The 3 Andrews sisters gave all of us a lot of fun sounds, a lot of good novelty songs, a lot of happiness.
Oh, thanks,
Okay,
Link.
Link.
It's
Thank you very much. It's very nice being here.
From 1934 to 1951, the Andrews sisters produced one hit after another, recording more than 400 songs and selling almost 100 million records, of which 19 were certified gold. As the youngest and last surviving member of the World War II era trio, Patty died in 2013 at the